Okay, we're live. We are live. And okay, so I've just launched double O, no, 2B,
Yes, to be.
2B, actually. And it's amazing since I've launched the newsletter how much, how it's going in a way that I didn't think it would, or I didn't, I didn't realize I hadn't planned this to be the main feature of this month. But the feature is um is double distance and how it is just showing up in a way that I I didn't realize was such a big thing for remote buyers. I thought the main hurdle was distance. That's the obvious one. And all of our five key points, pressure points, pain points for remote buyers all center around that distance factor and how we bridge that gap. But what it has made me realize, it actually gives me goosebumps thinking about it and talking about it right this second, is that we have actually been, a big part. In fact, the main ingredient of our steps one and two is about a sixth pain point that we realized of late. And we've given it the name of double distance. And so this was my last LinkedIn post to try and give a little bit of context. For example, expat couples that are trying to coordinate from two different countries. So, one might be traveling for work, or one might be, in and out of the office all the time. So the couples are separate as well as the distance. So it's the double whammy. Friends or family acting on the ground as advisors. Buyers relying on delayed or secondhand advice, underlying that one. Contracts misunderstood due to local nuance. That's an example that we've experienced in the last week. And ultimately, this is one of the effects of the sixth pain point, which is disconnection, is opportunities are missed because of it. Too slow to react, just don't get it. And the big one, and it really is the big one, is that when you rely on secondhand advice, you're very much relying on their opinion. One of the key components to our process before we even start walking through inspections is getting to the bottom of what really, really, really matters for our clients, which involves seeing the scenario, seeing and often, I would say in most instances, our clients themselves don't really know what matters to them until they go multiple layers deep. And we've got a process for that. But anyway, hit me with some questions.
Well, double distant, right? I think it's good to always tell a story. And there was a couple that we met.
Mm,
The husband was born and bred New Yorker, wife was originally from Melbourne, and they got their secondhand advice from relocation agent
relocation.
to tick the boxes of their checklist to move to a
Yeah.
location where it meets all their criteria. But very quickly, once they move, that was the first thing that you talk about, which is not just the obvious culture shock, is also the reverse culture shock about like because the wife was originally in Melbourne, but
Mm,
then living in Brooklyn for 9 years, coming back, it's still a shock for where they choose to live in. And very, very quickly they realize like that's not the place for their lifestyle. Doesn't matter what they're looking for at the start because they seeking that they trust the help they seeking for, and that didn't work out.
yeah.
And that's why they come to us um, for that help, which, like I said, there's a process in play that we have. I know that I think in the end we'll talk about what we can send out for people to help out to avoid that as well as much as possible. Um, so yeah, I think that's one of the main thing that we've seen a lot more recently with a lot of clients where the double distance is not just the distance itself. The husband and wife, they both emotionally disconnected in some shape or form of, because the husband never lived in Melbourne. Aussie culture, the down under, is different from Brooklyn,
Mm.
really.
And it's
So,
and it's wildly different suburb to suburb as well in terms of
yes,
lifestyle.
yeah. Like, the big backyard lifestyle, what they're thinking in Australia was actually being here. It's very much a shock for them. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think that's the first, like, one of the example we've seen with the double distance, isn't it?
it is. It's
So
sorry, go.
that's okay. So how, like, with what you've seen, like I said, how many times that we came across this kind of issue or challenges?
Well, I think the big thing that you were talking about there a moment ago is that anybody that's relocating at distance, they have to put their trust in somebody because they're not there. And that's a big word. It really is, because you can easily get that wrong. And so, but you have to trust somebody, otherwise you just wouldn't do it. I've just been through the process with you. And, I realized firsthand at how difficult it is to do this. Well, actually, my conclusion is it would almost be impossible to do it on my own. But it's it's the trust factor, and so we're putting together a collection of tools for anybody to use to reduce the risk of remoteness. I'm very, very excited about those. We'll talk about those more later. Okay, um, but in to answer the question you just asked me, I think going through the last few weeks has been really quite exciting because it's actually affirmed to me what we do is actually quite different and quite extraordinary. Because quite to put it into a single answer is that we put so much emphasis on understanding what really matters to our clients. And it's not that I took it for granted. I'm trying to find the correct way to phrase it, but it's we go to extraordinary depths to really define somebody's shortlist. And that is not, as you described in the relocation example, it is not just how many bedrooms do you want, how many bathrooms, garage. It's, it's not a checklist. It is a matter of going layers and layers deep. And often somebody who's writing their initial wish list, we really should actually start doing this. I think it would probably be the best social media advertising we could ever do, is actually if we could just show somebody's wish list, which is the woohoo list that we would all just imagine that the perfect place would have, to eventually what they buy is extraordinarily different, right?
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, like miles apart, but yeah, it is a matter of seeing it through people's lenses and understanding what it is that is most important to them. And in the example of the Brooklyn clients there, is that our job is to actually, and like I said, this is not just ticking boxes. This is a matter of providing constructive challenge, making them realize things that they didn't consider. And double distance challenges and hurdles are a massive part of an international relocation.
And that's linked back to the secondhand advice, right? It's not just the relocation agent. Who else? Who else people seeking for relocation aid for secondhand advice?
Secondhand advice. Yep. So the again shows up in many different shapes and forms, but a huge one's friends and family. That's the obvious. And here's the number one problem. It just feeds in beautifully from what I was just talking about there, is that if I asked my parents to go and look at a property for me, they would put me off pretty much every single property they'd ever go through, because they would simply just look for what ticks their boxes, not mine. And it wouldn't matter how many conversations I've had with them, is that they would still find something that they didn't like, and they would, they're not trained to look at property in the way that we are, let's say. And so it wouldn't be a fair representation of what it is. And here's a massive, massive, massive part, and again, we've got a solution for this for anybody looking to do this remotely, is an inspection of a property does not start when you walk through the front door. We spend 8 hours of due diligence time looking at any property that we're going to make a move on. And a big chunk of that is before we even arrive at the open for inspection.
Well, we need to be telling people 8 hours is per property.
Absolutely. Per property that we are going to make an offer on, we have spent 8 hours reviewing this property. And that's not 8 hours inside this property. There's a lot of work that we'll do before we go, a lot of consultation, professionally between us, but also professionally with the clients. And again, this is a massive, massive part of understanding what is really important to them. That collective console, and this feeds back, we're putting this in the context of couples, but even more so with single people buying on their own, is that they don't have another person always that will see it through their eyes and maybe alert them to something that doesn't quite align with their goal. And that is our job to do this. And so where we're going here with all of this is, again, absolutely free for anybody. It doesn't have to be a client. If we can help anybody in a remote purchase, that's our mission. And we're gonna, at the end of the month, we will have a complete guide and video tutorial, like a training thing, that will help you on looking at properties remotely. It'll go into the absolute fine detail of what it is we're doing before the inspection, how we're doing the inspections, how we're holding the cameras, how we're recording, what we're looking for, the questions that we're asking. Everything will be available to anybody who's looking remotely. It's very cool, very exciting.
Well, I think that will basically makes relocation agent lose some of the client, but you'll also minus some family feel along the way anyway. So I think that's a good outcome.
We'll break up some relationships, but we'll keep families closer together, which is good.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. All right, cool. I think that's all we've got time for today. Do you know what? We could talk. What I have realized in the last couple of weeks, it's this subject just shows up in so many layers. It's extraordinary. And like I said, I thought the biggest pain point was distance, but it's actually not. It's disconnect, which is the double distance factor, is what we're talking about here. So more to come on this subject. Lots of social stuff going out at the moment. The newsletter it's going to actually 003 is a perfect place to look at many different forms of double distance that we've seen in the past month. And then there's going to be it's not a live event, it's going to be a recording where we're going to get a few people around the table and actually talk about some of these scenarios in a little bit more detail. And if that can resonate and help anybody that's trying to do this remotely, then great, job well done. Can't wait.
Sounds good. And what's the name of the toolkit?
ChatGPT's become, like, if you saw my search history in ChatGPT, it's all about naming stuff. And like in particular, all of the newsletter articles, everything that I just like a cool name for it. And the place I start from usually is what I don't want. And I don't like the generic, the real estate blueprint for buying from overseas. I just, those words, I just can't stand them. I like something with a little bit of a double meaning, a little bit cool, a little bit fun. And for this here, which is basically my expat toolkit for buying at 15,000 kilometers away, right? But it's called the Short Circuit. It's cool. It's good, isn't it? You seen?
Well, it's a
Now listen. I bet you haven't seen that movie. You don't even know what that means. Short Circuit.
I only know the short circuit for electrical stuff, but nothing beyond that
This
meaning.
weekend. This weekend. Do you know what? It probably won't even be on Netflix. This weekend, Google or try and watch. And I think there's two or three of them. I think they got to Short Circuit 3 movies. Watch it. And honestly, any expat in my age group, particularly if they're Poms or whatever, they will get that in a completely different way than what you've got. It's pretty cool.
You make it sound like you're the oldest person in the country that don't know a lot of movies.
Anybody in their 40s, Short Circuit, the classic.
All right, I'm gonna find it out. I'm on a mission now.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Cool. All right, nice one. See you soon.
Yeah.